Here we are back in studio with Real with Pastor Dixie and friends. And today we're going to be talking about how children that grow up in families with addictions are affected. And I've got Dr. Margot Bush over here in chair number 2.
Hey, how are ya?
And I've got Dixie Pebworth, Pastor Dixie over here.
Praise the Lord.
Number 3.
Thanks for tuning in today.
If I can hit the right button.
We'll get there sometime or not.
So, Margot and I were having a
this
discussion.
is especially important to me because I'm the children's pastor, and so we deal with a lot of children that have come from addicted homes, and because I was not from an addicted home, and it's not in my family, then it's something very new that I have to learn and have had to learn over the last year or two that I've been with you. And it's very different dealing with children. And I know, David, you and I were just talking a minute ago because you have a household of, foster children that come from addicted.
I do. Well, I did. I mean, most of them are adopted now.
Yes.
But I've got 2 in particular that were born to mothers that were using during their pregnancy. So there was drugs found in the umbilical cord.
Yeah, and then they come to my children's church, and so this is super interesting to me because, and how you work with them and how you deal with them and how you then they come to my children's church and they
wreak havoc. Right?
Well,
is that what you're going to do?
Some of them wreak havoc. Others of them you've done great jobs. You've done. I mean, they're older now, and they've been in your home. And man, I've always said you and Tammy are just the best parents ever. I mean, really, you should get a gold star.
I don't know about that,
but
we try.
Well, Tammy deserves the gold star. David's a little struggling.
Right.
He's still growing up. He's still a big kid, but
that's a fact. Yeah.
But he definitely they do an incredible job with kids.
I see him, and I see the difference, and I see the difference in your children coming to your home and children coming into other homes. Mm-hmm. It doesn't. They don't always get the care or the attention or the help that they need.
Yeah.
So
and every kid needs a different type of help. I haven't seen 2 kids that need the exact same thing ever. There are some commonalities, when a child is born to a mother that's been using. Of course, you pray over them. You pray that God removes any kind of long-term effects of that drug abuse. But and we believe that our kids have been delivered from that, and I see the evidence of them being delivered from it. But there are effects that are very real, and you have to be brought up to speed on. One of the things that first happened that was so interesting to me is when we got JC when he was 6 days old, mm-hmm. and this kid cried all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He cried all the time, especially at night. Mm-hmm. He cried a lot, and no one could calm him down. This was when he was just a few days, the early weeks. And by accident, we found out that he would calm down with loud noises. The louder the noise, the more calm he would be.
Wow.
And I got to the point to where I would hold him really close and put my mouth next to his ear and just sing loudly.
Yep.
Really?
Very loud. And he would calm right down and go to sleep. Yep. And the only thing that I could attribute that to was the violence and the chaos that was in that home before he was born.
Or just in his mama's life.
Or in his mom's life. Yep. That was the only thing that he had been used to
and would respond to.
Because
it felt normal to him.
Yeah. It was the normalcy, I guess. But I mean, my older kids would just laugh. Oh, Dad's putting JC to sleep again, and I'm like, rock-a-bye, baby, just as loud as I can, and he would just calm right.
Wow.
Yeah. It was the strangest thing.
Yeah, it helped bring peace to his heart. And which is really strange. Ann and I went through the same thing whenever we adopted, or we actually took on the guardianship of her niece. And sister had a baby, and at the time that she had the baby, she was on cocaine, and the baby was tested positive for cocaine when she came out.
Yeah.
She was born 3
really?
months. Yeah, the amazing thing, she was born 3 months premature. They was counting her ounces instead of her pounds. They didn't think she was going to live. They put her in an incubator for the last 3 months. She had a lazy leg and a lazy arm that had not been fully developed. She also had lungs and kidneys that was not fully developed, and because she came out at 6 months old. Well, in that, they wound up locking her mom up, filed charges against her, and her mom went to prison. And this was like 2 years after I'd gotten out of prison. And we had to go to DHS and get full custody. And what happens, I went to my wife's sister and just said, hey, do you want the baby or do you not? And she says, no, I want my baby. And that baby wound up pulling her sister out of the addiction and pulling her sister into adulthood, I should say. But at the same time, we went and got the baby and took care of her for 2 years. Same thing. She'd wake up in night terrors. I was the only one who could calm her down.
Yep.
And I would sing Amazing Grace to her all night. I probably sung Amazing Grace 10 times in a night just to get her to stay calm and to be able to sleep. And at that time, I was working a split shift, so I was able to do that and allow Ann to sleep so she'd get up and go to work of a morning. And then I would get up, take her to the daycare, and then I'd come back and get me some rest. But it was just something in the drugs and something in their system. With JC, it was the wild life. Probably the same thing with my wife's sister, because it was chaotic. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so the babies respond to that. Now, the sad thing about about my niece today is that she's had like 3 babies, and she's in California, but she has a detachment disorder. And she doesn't attach, and it doesn't, and because of that, when she has a baby, she can detach from it. And it's really rough, but at the same time, now she's maturing, almost 30, and she's starting to mature like, no, I think I want to keep my baby now, and I think I want to grow up. And so, but it's just one of those things you don't really understand. They're still researching babies and being, testing positive for drugs, and it affects the babies basically the rest of their life. And then not only that, kids growing up in addiction, there's no discipline, there's no correction. A lot of times the kids become the adult and the adult becomes the kid.
Often.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about 8, 9-year-old kid telling a mama what she needs to do, or telling a daddy what he needs to do, because the daddy's so strung out, the mama's so strung out. They don't function as adults anymore. They actually convert back to childhood. And so the kids at 8, 9, 10 are maturing so much faster than a lot of the other kids in their elementary schools. And so you have that maturity level, but then yet you still have a childlike faith or a child that's still needing to grow. And so it makes it very difficult ministering to them. And or if they're willing to submit to discipline, it makes it a lot easier, I should say. Because a lot of the kids see their parents and say, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
That's not the pathway I want to go down. That's not what I want to be. And sometimes you break the cycle of addiction with the kids, because only the kids see what the parents has done. And if you can't get the parents' cycle of addiction broken, then you can work on the kids. But a lot of the kids, I mean, they're gifted and talented. They have their own gifts. They have their own talents. They have their own character. As David said a while ago, what works for one may not work for the other because they're all different.
Yeah.
But that's the way God created all of us. We're all different. And if we have the opportunity to really focus on an individual and help them to begin to grow, a lot of times when they start maturing, they really, really do well because they know they don't want that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And you have 2 daughters. Did they come out of addicted homes?
They did. Both parents used both drugs and alcohol. Mm-hmm. My younger daughter, she was actually born with it in her system, whereas the older one was not.
Yeah, there's a difference there.
Yeah, and so it's affected. You wouldn't know really just to talk to her, but it has given her some learning disabilities, and so she has IEPs at school, which are independent education programs that are tailored for people that struggle with things like dyslexia and stuff like that. But as far as in every other way, she's just a perfectly normal, beautiful girl. But she does struggle with some learning disabilities or some slowed down learning processes, and a little bit with the clumsiness. A little bit with the clumsiness.
Yeah.
She bumps into things, and I see that also with Journey. You know, our youngest, our 4-year-old. Journey had the same mother as JC.
Oh,
And so
okay.
even though she didn't report, I don't think she reported using. There's evidence. There's evidence, cognitive type evidence that she probably was. So, but a lot of those things are overcome with biofeedback. A lot of those things are overcome with therapy. My wife's really good about getting them into occupational therapy, even when they're little bitty kids, and physical therapy and different things. And you can overcome all of that. A lot of prayer. But, you know, we have relatively mild cases. I've seen some, you know, where it's a way lot worse, and they have to have medication and, you know, constant counseling and stuff like that.
And there's times in those situations where I can see the medicine being a solution, not a demise. Okay, and I'm not against medicine 100%. I believe God has a place for medicine, and I
Right.
believe that God will use it to help people get to the place they need to be. And there's sometimes in those situations, I do have a chemical imbalance in the brain. They do have a chemical issue going on within them that needs to be balanced out. And those are the ones that are special, and they're good. But most of the time when they're on their medicine, they do very well. I have 2 grandsons that came from parents of addiction.
Oh, they came. They
'Cause
had
my
addicted
daughter,
parents.
my daughter adopted them.
Right.
And
So
she
yes.
became a foster parent, and she got 1 baby. And then 11 months later, the same mama had a 2nd baby.
Same thing happened with us.
Same thing.
Exact same thing.
And so my daughter stepped in. They required her to, if she's going to adopt one, she needed to adopt both, and she did. The youngest one seems to be a little different than the older one, or having more struggles than the older one is.
Yeah.
But you can tell they both have had in their past the issues of the parents.
Were they
coming out.
born with, were they addicted? The babies?
Was it in the core?
Yes.
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 As far as I know, yes. I know DHS
Okay.
took them immediately from the hospital.
Okay.
And that's what they do when there's been any sign, because what they do is they test the umbilical cord. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is I'm saying it right? And if at any time in the past 6 months the mother has used, it will show up in the cord.
Okay.
And so that means that it was in the baby or it went through the baby's body. And so in that's what, you know.
Now, is there withdrawal that has to happen with those children?
Just depends on the level of abuse.
It depends on,
And if they're using a lot and it's going through that umbilical cord constantly, then that child is addicted, just like the mom.
that child needs it just like the mama does.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I mean, I got this one lady, she came in through our program, and she was 6 months when she got here, and she'd been actively using. For the last 3 months of her pregnancy.
She was 6 months pregnant?
She was 6 months
Okay.
pregnant. And for the last 3 months, we was able to get her sober. When the baby came, the baby still had it in the cord, but the baby wasn't addicted.
Yeah.
Because she had already overcame the addiction while the baby was still in her womb.
Wow.
And so they didn't have to give the baby any drugs or anything like that to calm the baby. But now, to this day, she's got the baby back and doing very well. And the baby doesn't seem to have issues.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because usually when they're using during those formative years, you know, when they're still developing, in
especially
the
the
womb,
3 and 4 months.
it usually affects something.
How many children at the church do you think are from, what percentage do you think are from addicted parents?
About the same amount as we do with the congregation, probably about 80, 90%.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's nice to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you came along. Well,
Did I ask that before I
knew that
came
question.
on staff?
I don't think so.
I don't
no.
think I did. What was I thinking?
Well, I don't think you was.
I don't.
I think the Spirit of God had taken over, and the Spirit of God told you this is what you're going to do.
Man,
and
I'm telling you, it was
you're going to
not.
be an act of your obedience, and you're going to do
Well,
it.
thank you.
Now, I will say this: it can be used just like the medication. Okay, it can be overprescribed, and
Yes.
it generally
Yes.
is.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it can be a catch-all.
Yeah.
So, don't let the kids fool you.
Okay.
Sometimes they're just being kids.
Yes, I agree.
Okay? And they're not. They're just being disobedient.
It's
little,
and almost I tend to go that way. I tend to do what you just said is just go like there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just a child. You're just a kid. You're just throwing a ball and
we've taken
JC, get off the chair. Stop standing on top of the
Yeah, we've taken all of the medication. We've gotten all of the kids off of their medication.
Praise God.
Over time, they can't just yank it.
Please
because
don't.
a lot of times you have to fill it back in with organic, with dietary changes and stuff like that. So you don't just yank it, but you find out what the kid responds to and what they're deficient in, and you make it up naturally instead of chemically.
Yeah.
And that's where the doctors will just overprescribe the chemical because it's easy. You don't have to cook a certain way. You just give them the pill. Well, if it zombifies them, well then they don't seem as bad, but really, they're worse.
They're just zombie, because they become zombie. They become There's a lot of schools that's doing that. They require certain schools require kids to be on certain medicine only to calm them down.
Yeah.
But yet they wind up turning them into zombies.
But really, it's not even. In some cases, it's not needed at all because, especially, I'm just gonna jump on the little boys bandwagon here. Little boys need activity.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, adventure.
They need stimulation to their brain. They need to be able to think and do things with their hands and stuff. And when you set a child down that's, 6, 7 years old and tell them you can't move from there and you have to,
it's the truth.
is not.
It's a boy.
He's a boy. He needs to get up and build something. And do something.
Yeah.
And
hit something. Jump over something.
The teachers that will not allow that and instead require Adderall or Ritalin or something to zombify them. That's child abuse, man.
It really is in the state, and one day the government needs to deal with that. I will say this: there's a lot of doctors out there one day will stand before God, and because they think they're God, they will get to meet the real God.
Wow.
And they have destroyed lives upon lives. They think they're doing the right thing, but in reality, they're doing the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, whenever Casey, my youngest, was in elementary school, the teacher came and said, "You need to go get him Adderall." And I said, "What?" And I never even that was not even on my mind during. He was very active. He's very active, and yes, you cannot put him in the middle of a room and expect him to be there even 5 minutes later.
Right.
So, he's jumping over stuff. He won't mind me. And I go, well,
Here we
it
go.
is not Adderall.
No. Well, there is a part of the Bible that talks about discipline. There's a part of the Bible that talks about correction. In today's society, we have very little of it.
Very little.
You can tell. You can tell the children that are disciplined and the children that are being corrected because they got a good mom and a good daddy. The sad thing is you got broken homes that doesn't have a good daddy, or a broken home doesn't have a good mama. And because of that, there's no discipline, there's no correction. So the kids are actually start rebelling, at a very young age. And without that correction, they'll probably wind up in prison or dead. And it's sad.
And I will say this, that I don't think that women, even just because they're single mom, have, God will supply. That's what I always said. God will supply.
God will be a father to the father.
That's right. You don't have to use that as an excuse. Well, he didn't ever had a dad. Well, he never had a dad, or she never had a dad.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I believe, and just with my youngest, because Bill went on to be with the Lord when, yes, he was in high school, but even still, that was an important part in his life.
Oh, yeah.
I still became that mom and dad.
Yeah.
And I believed God, that God would be what he said he would be. And man, praise God, thank the Lord.
He always showed up.
God showed up.
God always showed up.
Hallelujah.
And I've watched mamas over the years. I've watched mamas that stand their ground, discipline their children, train them up, and do their best to be the mama. And
Yep.
it's amazing what the kids
Yep.
will do, because the kids will respond to discipline. Kids will respond to structure. They really want it. They may cry about it for a
Yes,
second.
they do.
But the reality is whenever they have that nap, it's a beautiful thing. Kids don't want to lay down for naps. Kids don't want to do certain things. But when the discipline comes and the
Right.
structure is there, it's amazing how it transforms the kids.
It really
whether
is.
whether they were born and addicted to drugs or whether they've been in an addicted family, when discipline comes in, when correction comes in a right manner, not abuse, not
Right.
yelling, screaming, and hollering, that doesn't solve anything. The calmness of the heart will get more results than anything. But then they begin to prosper. They begin to grow. They begin to become normal and be what everyone else is
Right,
in today's
right.
society. And so, anything else you got, David?
We've had over 40 children come through our household.
Praise God.
And,
Wow. Wow.
It is different with each one, but I will tell you this: the love of God works every single time.
Imagine that.
every single time.
The love.
Even with the hardest of the hard ones, even with the ones that they were only there with us a weekend or two, the first thing we usually do is bring them to church. Expose them to the love of Jesus at least once or twice while we've got them, because we're an emergency placement, and so we don't know when one shows up.
Oh, and you're allowed to deal with trauma and everything.
Oh yeah, definitely, almost every time.
Yeah.
So, and the best thing for that is the love of God, and so I can just say that love covers all.
Well, it does.
It covers everything. I haven't seen anything yet that it won't cover.
Amen.
Wow. That's powerful.
Not every situation turns out wonderfully,
Right.
but it turns out better when you bring God into it.
Yeah, it turns out better when
every
God
time.
shows up on the scene for all the time. I mean, love never fails. Love will change a person's heart from the inside out.
Yep.
So you always want to apply love, true love, and let that love grow in a person's heart. The seed that we sow, the water that we put on the seed, that love needs to prosper, because that love will heal the heart, and that love will heal the soul, and that love will restore that person's life to become all that God created them to be. Anything else you want to share, Margot?
That's it.
Oh,
Man, that
praise
was
the Lord.
good.
Well, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to Real with Pastor Dixie. It's been a blessing and an honor. We pray that this podcast reaches out and touches you and blesses you today. Catch us next time on Real with Pastor Dixie and Friends, and God bless you. And always remember, God loves you.